Alright, so I originally had a longer presentation plan for today, but um, after about an hour and a half of troubleshooting my streaming mic with OBS for recording, I couldn't get anything working. I decided to just switch to my webcam microphone, so apologies for the poor quality. And then I picked a shorter room on Tryhackme. I've been working a lot of Linux privilege escalation lately, and I came across this little buffer overflow CVE, so this will just be a quick demo. The room pretty much walks us through everything to do, and they even have the exploit on the target machine for us. All we have to do is kind of just follow the directions, but here we go anyway. CVE 2019-18634 is at the time of writing the latest offering from Joe Venix, the same guy who brought us the security bypass vulnerability that we used in the security bypass room. This one is slightly more technical, using a buffer overflow attack to get root permissions. It has been patched, but affects versions of Sudo earlier than 1.8.26, and we all know that patching doesn't always go so well in a lot of organizations. So let's break this down a little bit. In the security bypass room, which I did not do, I mentioned briefly that you can add things to the etc sudoers file in order to give lower privileged users extra permissions. For this exploit, we're more interested in one of the other options available, specifically an option called password feedback. This option is purely aesthetic and usually turned off by default, with the exception of elementary OS and Linux Mint, although they will likely now stop using it. If you have used Linux before, then you might have noticed that passwords typed into the terminal usually don't show any output at all. Password feedback makes it so that whenever you type a character, an asterisk is displayed on the screen inside the etc sudoers file. It is specified like this. So we just see password feedback is set. Here's the catch. When the option is turned on, it's possible to perform a buffer overflow attack on the sudo command. To explain it really simply, when a program accepts input from a user, it stores the data in a set size of storage space. A buffer overflow attack is when you enter so much data into the input that it spills out of that storage space and into the next box, overwriting the data in it. As far as we're concerned, this means if we fill the password box of the sudo command up with a lot of garbage, we can inject our own stuff at the end. This could mean that we get a root shell. This exploit works regardless of whether we have any sudo permissions to begin with, unlike in CVE 2019-14287, which we don't know what that is, where we had to have a very specific set of permissions in the first place. Here's proof of concept. So using Perl to try and overflow, and we see a segmentation fault in the password section. In this command, we're using the programming language Perl to generate a lot of information, which we're then passing into the sudo command as a password using the pipe operator. Notice that this doesn't actually give us root permissions. Instead, it shows us an error message, segmentation fault, which basically means that we've tried to access some memory that we're not supposed to be able to access. This proves that a buffer overflow vulnerability exists. Now we just need to exploit it. This particular exploit that we're going to use was written by Salim Rashid. This is a program written in C that exploits CVE 2019-18634. In reality, buffer overflow attacks are considerably more complicated than in the explanation above, so we're not going into a huge amount of detail about what the program is doing exactly, but you can imagine that it's doing the same thing as in this explanation. And I've actually done a course on buffer overflow, and it is not very fun. So filling the root password, I've already uploaded a compiled copy of the code into the VM, so all you need to do is run it. The next section is interesting and useful if you ever need to use this program for a CTF or other hacking challenge, but not essential for completing the room. This is the process that you would use if you were to download the program for yourself. So first you download the program. In this case we use wget. The source code can be found on Salim's GitHub, so we can see up here, just pulling it straight from the GitHub exploit C. Next you compile the program. I've used GCC to compile the exploit. GCC-O, the output, so what you want it to be called, and then the source file. Notice that there are two files in the directory, a blue colored file called exploit, which is our compiled executable, and a white colored file called exploit.c, which is the original source file. You would then upload the file into the target machine and run it. And you can see I'm doing it here. As I've said earlier, I've already done the compilation and upload for you. All you need to do is log into the machine and run the exploit just to see it working for yourself. Now it's your turn. So we're going to SSH into the machine over port 4444. They give us a username, credentials, and it looks like we can actually just copy from here. So I'm going to be lazy and do that. It is asking for the password, which was Tryhackme. Okay, so we have a low-level user. Oops, I can't type. And this user cannot run sudo, so we have a low-level user, and then the exploit is in here for us. So we are just going to run that exploit. It's going to ask us for our password again. You can see Tryhackme not found, but you can see things kind of changed here. So quick, who am I? And we are root that quickly. So quick room, kind of a cool little exploit. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.